What we are building and want is to create and provide a tool to the men and women out in the field to help support their career development. Like I talked about, right? I'm a third generation. My dad, worked for 30 years in the industry, grew through the ranks. My grandfather, 8th grade education, right, on his tools his entire career, leading folks. If I could sit back with either one of them, and admittedly my grandfather's passed, but I'll sit down with my dad and he will start rattling off, I was on this project here and I talked to this person here and his favorite crane operator was so-and-so. Like, he's got all of these stories, but he's got to remember them all. He has no way to go through and show, here's all the projects I was on. There was this one, like this tiny one that I was on for just a couple months. And that is what we're working on building with BuilderFax, starting with the credential management, adding in the projects that you've built on, the specific experience, the skills, to be able to create that profile, right? That career path that you've had for each individual. And then be able to turn that around for the 18-year-old that takes a welding class in high school that's like, gosh, this seems really cool. But my parents are in finance. I know nothing about welding. They bring out their BuilderFax wallet a couple years down the road and say, hey, what could it be to be a journeyman welder, right? What would that look like? Oh, well, it's going to take about this many years. You're going to need these sorts of credentials. Here's some ideas of projects you could be on or money that you could make, right? And be able to show that back to them in a way that right now it doesn't exist, that's craft focused.
All right, I got to jump in here because I can't help but notice your company's BuilderFax, F-A-X, but really What you're talking about is facts, F-A-C-T-S, about builders. Was that intentional? Like, what's the backstory?
Like, are you talking facsimiles? Are you taking us back into the 80s?
Right.
What happened is during our discovery, this last fall, as we were talking with craft folks and IT and HR to really decide, is this something we had? Our founder, Kirk Samuelson, a 45-year industry vet, met with a group of craft out in Boise. And one of the guys in the room was like, so you're building the Carfax of my career? Hook, line, sinker, fish on, BuilderFax of the career.
That makes sense.
You're never going to get away from that.
Makes sense. Because we all remember Carfax.
I know.
The Carfax commercials.
100%. And what Carfax has done a really brilliant job of taking, it's the car, right? But taking all of that data and all of that information about that car's history and be able to provide it to you in a trusted report. And so as we take all this data in for each of our builders and be able to provide it in a consistent resume, right, a consistent format that's trusted, validated, and becomes an industry standard.
So let's double down on that. You said industry standard, perfect segue, because the reason that exists is because of VIN numbers, right? VINs, vehicle information number. Don't want to say number twice. Yep. But at any rate, like, is there a need? Is there any existence when it comes to a builder's profile for that level of VIN certification, or what's out there, or what's the need?
Right now, we are avoiding the personal identifiable information. Right now in this country, we've got one, Social Security numbers. And I know, spoiler alert with some of the news that's coming up, right? It's not exactly the best thing to use. But what we also know is that within our industry, each craft worker has a unique employee ID number with each contractor they work with. So what we're doing in our system is creating a relational database, right? Where you've got, Johnny or Sally, each craft worker is tied in with these different numbers to be able to create that web of trust without using a Social Security number and without creating that risk of opening that up. Really, the only personal information we're collecting right now is name and an email address. That's it.
I'm wondering, and then too, you could probably do the same thing when you're talking about your certifications. Those are relationally held, and usually those groups want that information consumable. Mm-hmm. Usually. I say usually. There's always an exception somewhere.
Sure.
So it's sort of the same thing. Like if I have my, if I'm a journeyman welder and I've got, certain certifications along the way, then depending on where I got trained, you can get that info.
Exactly.
And the more projects you've been certified on, that kind of like that the better your profile looks. Or I don't know if you guys have like a verified, kind of symbol or something when it's on multiple projects, and they can see that and gain more trust from it.
Yeah, what we have in the background, we haven't quite flipped the switch on it yet, but we have in the background is that verification piece, because we know folks are showing up to a job site, handing over the card, someone's looking at it and saying, yes, that's legit, or taking the card, looking in the number online, right? In like the crane operator system or an OSHA 30 system or OSHA system, right? To validate that. So what we're building in is the ability to create that vehicle for the validations where, I can scan a picture, right, of my card. I can upload the data, right? It's in there, but it's unvalidated or unverified. And then be able to build in, hey, I got this credential from this training provider over here, but DPR certified it, right? We're good. And then we're actually working with training providers as well to issue credentials directly through the system. So it comes through from that training partner and shows up as that verified in the system, and be able to report and show on that.
That's cool. It's like a different version of a two-factor authentication sort of thing.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, we want it to be trusted credentials and trusted information. And we're not going to be doing that verifications or validations ourselves, right? But we want to create that vehicle within the ecosystem to be able to make that happen.